Hey, it's Caressa.
Hey, it's Maddie.
You're not watching the Disney Channel right now.
You're listening to
Dreadfully Twisted. Spooky music. Ooh. Hi, we're back.
We are back. Back again.
Sorry, I'm like all hyped up because we're having a spooky movie night. So
spooky night number 1. I'm so excited. Even though we only had one last year, we're going to try and do more than one.
Definitely. And we got to keep it going.
Yes, we do.
Life, you're not getting in the way anymore.
No.
Stop. After this week and after Sunday, stop.
Yes. Unless somebody has a migraine, after we record, it's going to be a spooky movie night.
I'll stop it. Okay, that was life telling us no.
Well, too bad, life. We're doing it.
Yeah. So, how was your week?
It was good.
That's good. Mine was hectic.
Any spookiness happened?
Yeah, remember?
Yeah.
I never told you about it?
Yeah, you told me about that.
Screenshot it all. So, really quick story. I know you know what happened,
yeah,
Maddie, but everybody listening doesn't. After we recorded last Sunday, I went home. I was supposed to hang out with my mom and my sister, Kira, but life told me no. And then Tyr, my dog, my puppy, he's a Pomeranian, so he's tiny. He's like 6 pounds. He had a bird plant stuck in his throat, so we had to rush him to the ER. So while we were doing that, I left my sister and my mom at my house. I was just like, bye, I gotta go. I felt so bad because I didn't even get to hang out with them. Like, I literally just picked my mom up and then got home. Like, not even 15 minutes later, this happened. And I was just like...
Get the baby safe.
So we rushed him to the ER, like the emergency vet, which was 45 minutes away. The only one that was open. Yeah. Irritating. But while we did that, Kira and my mom stayed at my house. She ended up taking my mom back to where she was going to drop her off at. And then she just came back to my house to like look after Loki and my cats and stuff. So while she was doing that, she stayed till about 8 o'clock. And then she texted me randomly like 7:50 because we were at the ER. We were at the, not ER, but like emergency vet for 6.5 hours. But it was so long. We didn't get home till like 1 o'clock in the morning. It was ridiculous. And we didn't eat. The only time we ate that day was 11, like before I came over. It was right before then. So like we were starving.
Because that was the only one open. That's
yeah.
the only thing I can imagine.
But while we were there, like 7:50, Kira texted me saying, hey, is Jeremy talking on the ring? And I'm like, no, why? And she was like, well, Loki barked a couple times. And then I heard like Jeremy's stern voice say, quit, twice. And I was like, no, he's on his phone right here. Because he was with me. I'm like, he's on his phone. He's on Facebook or like playing a game or whatever. I was like, he's not on the ring. Plus, like, if he was, you wouldn't hear it from inside the kitchen. And it was the kitchen where everything happens. Mm-hmm. So she texted me, and I was like, I was asking her questions, and she said, oh, I also did notice, and I don't know, I may not mean anything, but earlier when I was at your house, I was typing to you, and I had a few sentences of whatever, and it slowly deleted itself. So that happened, and then I was like, oh, that's weird. My ghost might have been messing with you, LOL. And then she was like, that's what I was thinking. And then she was like, rude, LOL. And she was like, definitely spooked out when I heard someone, but I kept my cool. I didn't feel threatened, just kind of wigged out. And I was like, were you in the house when you heard that? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, freaky, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then she was like I said, I was in the kitchen and Loki was barking and I heard, which I swear sounded like Jeremy say quit like 2 times. And I was like, it's not this camera, like my camera inside the kitchen. It wasn't that because it was like faint. Yeah. And she was like, maybe Jeremy can hear him bark outside. It was so soft but loud enough as if you were standing on the porch with the door closed. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, freaky, you might have experienced a mimic. And then she said, yeah, pretty freaky because it sounded like Jeremy, his calm but sternly soft voice saying quit. And then she was like back to back in between Loki's barks, and Loki was facing the kitchen door. But it wasn't like I was super freaked out about him barking because he does that. He was barking like something was outside. Is your kitchen cam always on? You can relook at the footage. And I was like, yeah. So I looked at it. I didn't listen to it with like sound to like hear it because I'm kind of freaked out to do that. But whenever it happens, Loki's looking up the stairs
Oh my gosh.
at one point.
Yeah.
Like, he goes towards the door, like he's barking, but he looks up the stairs as if, like, Jeremy would be yelling at him, because that's where Jeremy would be yelling at him from, was up the stairs. Like, it's like a couple seconds after, it's like a little bit here. But I'm like, I don't know if it's because we've been talking about them a lot, or I'm, like, very into, like, the paranormal right now, but it's kind of like here. He goes over here, and he looks up the stairs. But I was just like, that's freaky.
That is.
And then she was like, I don't know, because she wanted me to see, like, if we could see anything, and I couldn't really see anything. But then she texted me, like, immediately after it happened.
Yeah.
And I was just like, no, that was not Jeremy. That was probably a mimic in my house. So now I'm, like, scared. Because I'm like, I don't want to hear him.
I know, that's terrifying.
Especially since she said it sounded like Jeremy. And, like, that's...
I know.
It's the part that freaks me out.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, she experienced a mimic in my house. I want to kind of, like, look at the footage to see if you can hear it. But I'm, like, scared to. But I will eventually. And I've just been so busy this week with Tyr and everything. Like, it's been so crazy. He's finally, like, okay now, I think, because he's acting like himself now. Good. He's a little crazy thing. I was just like, that was, like, the scariest thing that's ever happened in my life, like, what happened with him, because I thought, like, if he couldn't breathe, like, we wouldn't have made it in time.
Yeah.
And, like, it was just, I'm just lucky he was able to breathe, but
I know. I
was just like, that's freaky.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But other than that, I haven't looked at my camera, really.
Yeah.
Like, at night, so I don't know if anything else, but
that's terrifying enough.
Yeah. I'm just glad I didn't experience it.
Yeah.
Because I almost stayed home on Sunday. I almost stayed home with my mom and my sister to hang out with them, but then they told me go, and I was like, okay. So if I would have stayed home, I would have probably heard that. And it's just like, I don't know, it's freaky. And, like, the fact that she was typing to me and then it just automatically deleted itself, it was like the ghost was like, stop bothering her or something. Or something. Like, I don't know. I'm just like, well.
Yeah.
So, spookiness is upon us, I guess.
It's spooky season.
Makes me wonder, like, what's gonna happen closer to Halloween, because, like, apparently the veil is supposed to, like, lift between, like, the other side and, like, this side. I wonder if I'm gonna catch anything, like, really spooky.
Yeah.
Kind of hope so.
Bring the EMF.
Oh my god, we should do that on Halloween.
Yeah.
For, like, a podcast episode, maybe. We still gotta go to that West Virginia penitentiary, too, for, like, the ghost night tour. I found it's, like, $35 to do it, which isn't bad at all.
Yeah, that's not.
And I'm like, we should go.
We gotta go to Green Man's Tunnel, too.
We got so many places to go.
We have so many places. We talked about so many places. We have to go to them.
That's it. Yes. We're just gonna do it.
We're gonna do it.
We're just gonna do it. So, for you today, I saw one case on TikTok that was called the same thing, but then I found this one. Oh, I mean, I guess it's called the same. I guess that one is called Killers instead of like Murders. But this is the Jigsaw Murders, and we're going old timey here.
Oh my.
I don't know why it's called the Jig. I guess we'll see, but it's from the 1930s because I'm feeling old timey. So I also do not know how to say this name, so I'm gonna try my best. But I think he's from India, I believe. So bear with me. So Buck Ruxton, he was born as Bakhtar Champa Rastanji Hakim. We'll try that. I'm so sorry if I butchered that.
That or something close to it.
Something close to it. Always close. But he changes his name later. So I'm just going to refer to him as Buck because that's what he changes his name to. And it's easier to say. Yeah. These murders are informally known as the Bodies Under the Bridge and the Jigsaw Murders, while Ruxton himself became known as the Savage Surgeon. Oh. Yeah. This case became known as the Bodies Under the Bridge due to the location near the Dumfriesshire town Moffat in... That's probably not how you say that. In the southern uplands of Scotland. I should have you be saying these names because you know I'm so good at it. In Scotland, where the bodies were found. The case was also called the Jigsaw Murders because of the painstaking efforts to reassemble and identify the victims and determine the place of their murder. So that's why they're called the Jigsaw Murders because, like, yeah. So I'm just going to say this now. He's the bad guy. You can obviously tell that from this.
Yeah.
But Buck Ruxton himself earned the title of the savage surgeon due to his occupation and the extensive mutilation he inflicted upon his victims' bodies. This case is one of them. I think he lives in the United Kingdom, actually. I don't know. Yeah, no, he's from British India, so I was right.
Yeah.
But it takes place in the United Kingdom. It's one of the United Kingdom's most publicized murder cases of the 1930s. The case itself is primarily remembered for the innovative forensic techniques employed to identify the victims and to prove that their murders had been committed within the same home. So they were trying, this is probably going to be a long one because of all of like the research and stuff that they do with it and how hard it was for them to get evidence. But Buck Ruxton was born in Bombay, British India on March 21st, 1899 into a wealthy middle-class Parsi family of Indian French. Ruxton received a respectable upbringing, and despite his being a sensitive youth with a few friends, he was highly intelligent and received a thorough education. By his teenage years, he had resolved to seek a career in medicine. With the financial support of his parents, Ruxton studied at the University of Bombay, where he qualified as a Bachelor of Medicine in 1922. The following year, he qualified as a Bachelor of Surgery at the same institution. Shortly after completing his studies, Ruxton obtained employment at Bombay Hospital, where he specialized in medicine, midwifery, and gynecology. Just a side note, I've never watched Saw.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Just a side note.
Add it to the list.
Yeah. I have not seen scary movies. Like, I love them. I just don't watch them that much. I have nobody to watch them with, so like, I just don't watch them.
Yeah. But
on October 29th, 1923, Ruxton was commissioned into the Indian Medical Service as a medical officer. He served in postings at Basra and later Baghdad before relinquishing his commission in October of 1926. In May of 1925, Buck married a woman named... God. You want to try to read that?
Okay, where at?
Right there. A woman named...
Motibai Ihan Jurji?
You're better at it than me. Goddali. The marriage was an arranged one, which ultimately turned out to be short-lived. When Buck relocated to Britain the following year, he concealed all evidence of the marriage. Although in 1928 he did contact his father-in-law, requesting he immediately send him the sum of £200 via telegraphic transfer. With financial assistance from his family in the Bombay Medical Service, he relocated to Britain in 1926. He attended medical courses at London University College Hospital under the name Gabriel Hakim before moving to Edinburgh in 1927 to begin studies towards a fellowship of the Royal Colleges of Surgeons. I cannot say that word. I am sorry.
Talking is hard, and so are these words.
A lot of words are hard. Although Buck failed his examination, the General Medical Council authorized him practicing medicine in the UK on strength of qualifications he had earlier obtained in Bombay. Shortly after, he legally changed his name via deed poll to Buck Ruxton. So that's where he changes his name. But it was also funny because he went under the name of Gabriel Hakim too.
Yeah.
Then he changed his name to Buck Ruxton.
Yeah.
Make up your mind. While studying to become a fellow of the Royal Colleges, hey, I did it, of the surgeons in Edinburgh, he became acquainted with a 26-year-old woman named Isabella Van S., who managed a cafe in the city. At the time of their acquaintance, Isabella was still legally married to a Dutchman who she married in 1919, but this marriage only lasted a matter of weeks, and she had resumed under her maiden name of Care. The two began dating, and Isabella was with Buck when he relocated to England in 1928. He worked as an understudy to a London doctor named Manek Modofram, and later as an assistant to a Stepney-based doctor named B.R. Reigate. The following year, Isabella gave birth to their first child, a daughter named Elizabeth. That name's easy to say.
Yeah.
In 1930, the Ruxtons relocated from London to Lancaster, Lancashire. Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Where he established a medical practice at his family home at 2 Dalton Square. Buck made great efforts to assimilate himself into British society, and he quickly acquired a reputation among his patients as a diligent and compassionate general physician who was well respected and popular within the community. He is known to have waived his treatment fees on several occasions when he felt his patients could not afford to pay them, which is actually very nice. Mm-hmm. Just stay like that.
Yeah.
Don't do what you're about to do.
Yeah.
Just stay like that. The following year, they welcomed their second daughter, Diane, into the world. I don't know why I said it like that. That's not what I wrote, but I guess I want to be fancy. They had their second daughter, Diane. 2 years later, in 1933, they had a son named William. The same year, the Ruxtons employed a young maid and a live-in housekeeper named Mary Jane Roderson, primarily to care for their children. It starts to get bad here.
Oh, no.
Not yet. Actually, yes, it does get bad here. But after what I'm about to say next, I'm going to have to put trigger warnings in, so yeah. It gets worse. Despite his reputation with the Lancaster community, the relationship between Buck and Isabella were distressed, and he became increasingly suspicious of Isabella's alleged infidelity, reportedly exploding into fits of rage or bouts of tearful hysteria and self-pity behind closed doors. Why?
Why
you have to turn into a bad person? I know. You sound great up until this point. Just don't.
Don't do it.
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you?
On several occasions, these arguments would prompt Isabella to pack her belongings and return to Edinburgh with her children. Although inevitable phone calls from Buck in which he would tearfully plead with Isabella to return to Lancaster, and she would return to him. Just stay away.
No!
Isabella,
run.
Just stay away.
Just run.
Red flag, red flag.
Red flag, red flag, red flag.
Just,
run. I'm sad because I know she probably didn't.
She probably what?
Didn't, but...
Yeah. Guess we'll see what he does.
Listen, Buck. Why did you have to turn into a bad person?
Right?
Yeah. You had potential.
And then he would later state to investigators that on frequent occasions, Isabella would return to their home. She would almost invariably say to him, I wonder how I could ever pick up an argument with you. So she was thinking it was her fault.
Yeah.
Red flag.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
Probably totally made her feel like that too.
Yeah, because that's just how abusive relationships are.
Yeah.
But I've put trigger warnings in here. There's a couple. So trigger warning of SA, suicide attempts, and miscarriage. So if you do not want to listen, skip like 30 seconds because it's kind of a paragraph. So skip like 30 seconds. Maybe like a minute just to be safe. It is unknown when Buck began to accuse Isabella of adultery and assault her, though their fights between each other resulted in police interventions on several occasions. The disputes between them occasionally had to be settled with a Lancaster police station, where police would observe Buck talking erratically before bursting into tears. Isabella is known to have attempted suicide by inert gas asphyxiation in 1932, and the suicide attempt had resulted in her suffering a miscarriage.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Because he's an awful person.
Exactly.
Like right there, police. Why didn't you like take him away because he's acting erratically and like be like, oh, and he's like, I'm mad. Then he switches like on a dime and starts crying. Like there's something wrong there. Get him help.
Exactly.
But they didn't. On one occasion in 1933, Isabella complained to police that her husband had began beating her. I guess I should have put actual domestic violence. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I've forgotten too before. So.
When police visited Buck's practice to investigate her claims, Buck denied he had assaulted his wife, alleging that Isabella had been unfaithful to him. Within 24 hours of this incident, Isabella had returned to him.
No, Isabella,
run away!
Run.
On another occasion, in April of 1934, a policeman had been called to their household following another fight. Upon his arrival, the officer was informed by Buck, quotes, Sergeant, I feel like murdering two persons. My wife is going out to meet a man, end quote.
Oh.
And you're not going to do anything?
Yeah, seriously.
He's going to be like, oh, okay, he's just kidding. They're never kidding. Great police work.
That's another one of our quotes.
Yeah, we need that on a shirt, really, with clapping hands. One day I will make shirts. I promise. One day I will.
Good police work. What is wrong with the justice system? They were just as stupid back then. Like,
I think they were even more stupid. Like, no offense, but like they let things slide way more then than they do now, because like no, it's the 1930s of it all, the 1800s of it all. You know, they said they weren't doing it, just like, you know, Trout Shoe said. It's fine.
The 1800s of it all. That's another quote that you say all the time. I love it.
I got that from somewhere. I don't remember where I got it from, but it's just funny. Like, I don't know. But it's true now. Like, it probably was way worse in the 1700s. I don't know.
Oh, God.
I don't even want to think about that. In early September of 1935, Isabella traveled to Edinburgh to visit one of her sisters. In her company was a prominent Lancaster family named, Edmondson. And the Ruxton family, like both Buck and Isabella, were closely familiar with them. To take care of the needs of his practice, Buck himself did not come with his wife. They're not... Okay, in my research, it said that they were common law married, but then it said that they were married. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure which one it is. Yeah. I guess it's the same thing. But he did not come with Isabella on the trip. He remained in Lancaster. He would later confess to investigators that he had been convinced that Isabella had been known to occasionally keep social company with a Nam. I always say that every time. A man. A man. I guess I have dyslexia. I don't know. Sorry. Same. Oh, jeez. And I also think I was trying to, like, combine man and named. Yeah. So just like, Nam. A man named Robert Edmondson, who was an assistant editor in the local town hall. She had been conducting an affair with him, apparently, to Buck, which I don't think she was, but, you know, whatever. It's fine, I guess. Yeah. And had used this trip as a means for them to continue their supposed affair. However, hotel records would later confirm that each adult had booked into separate rooms while they stayed there. So they weren't. Buck, they weren't. Why are you like this?
Why are you like this?
On the evening of September 14th, 1935, Isabella left the family home to view the Blackpool illuminations and visit two of her sisters, who both lived near there. She left Blackpool to return home at approximately 11:30 p.m. Upon her return to Dalton Square in the early hours of Sunday, September 15th, Buck's jealousy and paranoia apparently overwhelmed him, and most likely strangled Isabella into unconsciousness or death with his bare hands, before beating her and stabbing her body.
What is wrong with you?
Right. And either to prevent their housemaid from discovering his crime or because she had actually witnessed the act, Buck extensively bludgeoned her and either strangled or asphyxiated Mary Jane Rogerson. He probably also stabbed her either before or after she died. The amount of blood discovered on the stairs, wall, and carpeting of the Ruxton household indicates excessive blood flow prior to the body's mutilation, leading to the conclusion that Buck had either stabbed both of the victims extensively before or after death, or actually during the actual act of killing them. On the day, I can't talk.
Talking is hard.
I need to drink water. I got like an accident there. I don't know what happened. Wait, whoa, is it supposed to snow? I just said something about snow.
It did.
Sorry, I got distracted by the TV. There's the news on.
I hope not. It's too early. I need fall first.
I know, right? There's already Christmas stuff out everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Makes me so mad.
Mm-hmm. Enjoy fall.
They like stopped selling Halloween stuff. At least at the Dollar Tree, like beginning of like not even end of September.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. And then Walmart, they have the Halloween aisle, and then they have like a little bit of fall stuff, and now they're taking over with Christmas. And I'm like, it's not even Halloween yet.
No.
Makes me so upset. Yeah, let's restart this.
So you were getting into character with your accent.
On the day prior to the murders, Buck informed one of the two chairwomen he and Isabella were working with to come to his premises upon Monday, September 16th. Within hours of the murders, he had visited the home of the other woman, chairwoman he worked with and likely told her not to clean his premises until September 16th because she was like their cleaning lady. So he told her not to come back till September 16th. So he had this planned.
Yeah.
I just burped. I'm sorry.
I hate him.
I hate him too. What's wrong with you?
What is wrong with you?
So he was explaining that Isabella and Mary Jane had traveled to Edinburgh after he'd driven his children to the home of a dentist that he had a close relationship with, like close friendship with. He asked the couple to look after his children for the day. And he returned home and proceeded to extensively dismember and mutilate both bodies in the bathroom of his home in an effort to hide their identities. That's why he did it. Several hours later, at 4:30 p.m., he visited the home of one of his patients, Mrs. Hampshire, and asked both her and her husband to return to Dalton Square with him to help him prepare for the decorators, who were expected to arrive the following morning to perform work he claimed he had arranged several months previously. I hate him.
Me too.
When Mrs. Hampshire arrived at Dalton Square, she found the house in a state of disarray, like everything was like thrown everywhere. As she would later testify at Buck's trial, all the carpeting had been removed from the stairs. Several sections of the floor were littered with straw, which also protruded from beneath a locked bedroom door. In the waiting room of the property, Mrs. Hampshire discovered several rolled up sections of carpeting, stair pads, and a stained suit. In the garden of the property, she also discovered 2 sections of carpeting and several burned towels. Before they left the Buck's house, they were given several sections of stained stair carpeting and Buck's stained suit to keep upon the condition they thoroughly cleaned them. So he just had them be an accomplice to cleaning up a murder. And I bet he had the straw everywhere to cover the bodies too. So I have a news article here, and I'm just going to read because I like news articles. If you listen to the Greenbrier Ghost, you know,
yeah,
you know, I like all this stuff. So I have a problem. It's fine though. On the morning of 29 September 1935, which they stated things weird. 29 September 1935, that's really hard to read. A young woman named Susan Haynes Johnson glanced over the parapet of an old stone bridge located 2 miles north of the Dumfriesshire town of Moffat. On banks of the stream named Gardenholm Lynn, which ran beneath the bridge, Johnson noted a bundled wrap in fabric that was lodged against a boulder, with a partially decomposed human arm protruding from the package.
Oh my gosh.
Police from the Dumfriesshire Constable... I don't know how to say that word. Constabulary? Were called to the scene, discovering the remains within the package were human. Officers searched, not researched, searched the stream around ravines and the nearby Annan River, discovering 2 human heads and 4 further bundles, each containing extensively mutilated human remains, including thigh bones, legs, sections of flesh, and human torso and pelvis. These human remains were in an advanced state of decomposition and had been wrapped in bedsheets, a pillowcase, children's clothing, and several newspapers. 2 editions of Daily Herald dated 6/31 August 1935, an edition of Sunday Graphic dated 15 September 1935, and undated portions of the Sunday Chronicle. That's where this article is at.
That's terrifying.
He used his children's clothes.
Yeah.
What is wrong with
Literally.
you?
Just because he couldn't get any more disturbing, you know? He couldn't get any more disturbing.
He's gross.
Please.
He's gross.
What is wrong with you?
On October 1st, the remains were examined at Moffat Mortuary. I said that really weird. Mortuary. It's really hard to say, actually.
It is.
By the forensic scientist John Glaser Jr., a doctor named Gilbert Miller. Both men determined the 70 separate sections of human remains were discovered were 2 females of different heights and ages, and that the mutilation conducted upon the remains had been committed by an individual with extensive anatomical knowledge and obvious efforts to complicate the identification of the remains. In addition to extensive mutilation across both victims' entire bodies, because he took apart their whole body, like it's gross, which was Professor Glaser and Dr. Miller deduced that entirely committed with a surgical knife as opposed to either a saw or an axe. The murderer had removed the eyes, ears, skin, lips, soft tissue, and several teeth from both heads to make identification through dental records or composite drawings impossible.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And the fact that he could have used a saw.
Yeah.
I see why he's a jigsaw killer.
Yeah.
Gross. I hate you.
Me too. We hate you.
Like, how do you even do that? Like, how can you be that, like, messed up?
Yeah, literally.
And, like, psycho to be like, oh, I just killed these people. Let me just take apart their whole entire bodies. Let me remove their eyes. Like,
you have to be literally deranged.
And, like, he removes their skin, too.
Yeah.
And tissue.
Disgusting.
Like, gross. So, with additional attention being focused on the areas of the body where possible distinguishing features. I struggle every time I'm like doing my
Same.
My brain's just like, it's this. I'm like, ADHD, please focus. May have been like they were focusing on places where like features that like scars or vaccinations make like maybe like visible so they can see like, okay, we can at least try to see who had this and like stuff like that to try to like see who these people were, like those two females who've been like brutally murdered, which is awful. Like, and he probably had to do that. He probably needed a lot of time for that.
Yeah,
you would think. Like, gross.
That's like literally like horror movie times 10.
He also removed the fingertips from the set of hands initially discovered and completely pared off all the flesh of the legs of the one victim and from the thighs of the other one.
Why?
I don't know.
What is wrong with you?
Right? You're not seeing us, but we're making like motions.
Yes.
Like trying to emphasize
the what is wrong with you hand like about 8 times. Like, literally what is wrong with him.
He's so messed up. Like, I think this is like one of the worst cases that I've ever heard.
Yeah,
like they're all like terrible, but like this is like horror movie to the extreme.
It is.
Just like your last one.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
They're all like, it's so scary.
I know.
Of the 4 bundles that were recovered during the initial search, the first was wrapped in a blouse and contained 2 upper arms and 4 pieces of flesh. The second bundle comprised of 2 thigh bones, 2 legs from which most flesh had been stripped, and 9 pieces of flesh all wrapped in a pillowcase. The third was a piece of cotton sheeting containing 17 portions of flesh, and 4th parcel was also wrapped in cotton sheeting, consisted of a human trunk, 2 legs with 2 feet tied with the hem of a cotton sheet, and some wisps of straw and cotton wool. Other packages opened to reveal 2 heads, one of which was wrapped in a child's rompers, which is, oh, why would you do that? And cotton wool sections of the Daily Herald, 2 forearms with hands attached but minus the top joints of the fingers and thumbs, and several pieces of skin and flesh, and one was wrapped in the Sunday graphic newspaper. That was Professor John Glaser's inventory of the discoveries of the bodies. And I can't imagine the woman who accidentally came across this.
I know.
Like,
she was probably traumatized.
She was probably like, what the heck?
I know. I'd be traumatized for life.
Yeah. I'm gonna be traumatized for life researching this.
Yeah, seriously.
Glaser also noted in his autopsy reports that the person who had killed these 2 women had actually thrown the remains into the nearby Annan River as opposed to the tributary river Lynn, which had also been swollen with heavy rains at the time. The bundles would likely have flowed into the Solway Firth, thus delaying or permanently preventing their discovery. So he most likely put it in that river on purpose for them to be found.
Yeah.
See, he has to be even more messed up.
Exactly.
Because he wanted the attention. Given the proximity of the Garden Home Lynn stream to such a major arterial road, detectives from Glasgow, who had already established their remains were likely to be those of local individuals, began to consider the possibility the perpetrator had traveled to the southern uplands to dispose of their remains and may have been unfamiliar with the area. The 2 bodies were transported to the Autonomy Department of University of Edinburgh, where they first treated with either to prevent further decomposition and destroy all maggot infestation, because there's maggots on the bodies too. Ugh. Then preserved in... I'm sorry, this is very graphic.
Yeah.
I should have said that at the beginning. I'm sorry. Then preserved in formalin solution to be reconstructed. I'm struggling. Reconstructed. Pronunciation. Further bundle containing human remains was discovered shortly after the 2 bodies had been transported to the university. The bundle contained 2 human forearms with hands attached. The fingerprints had not been completely obliterated from the sole pair of hands found with the remains, and such investigators were able to obtain a complete set of fingerprints. So all that work just for them to be able to find fingerprints.
Yeah, seriously.
The irony. You didn't do it right.
Nope.
Which is good, because you're going to get what you deserve.
Exactly.
To estimate the time of death of the victims, the police requested the assistance of a Glasgow-based entomologist named Alexander Mearns, who, using the fine fledgling techniques of forensic entomology, is identified the age of the maggots found on the remains, studied the life cycle of the maggots found upon the bodies in order to approximate the time of death of both victims. I think I'm trying to talk faster than I actually can, and it's messing me up. Just need to slow down a bit. Okay. From his inspection of the bugs found upon the set of remains, he conclusively determined that they had originated from a particular breed of blowfly known as California Vincina, and that they had been discovered on the remains had been laid in the immediate vicinity where they were discovered. He deducted the remains could have not laid where they were discovered for less than 12 to 14 days. The conclusion suggested that the victims' bodies could not have been disposed of the location they were found after September 17th. And then it's going to get into more detail. So, sorry. From the skull sutures on both bodies, Glaser and Smith were able to determine that one of the bodies that was of a woman aged about 30 to 55, probably between 35 and 45, and that the second body was of a woman aged between 18 and 25, which she most likely was between 20 and 21 at the time of the murder. In reference to the cause of death, the older woman had 5 stab wounds to the chest, several broken bones, and numerous bruises. In addition to her lungs were markedly congested. Her hyoid bone had been broken, indicating that she had been strangled before the other injuries had been inflicted. The limbs and head of the second victim bore signs of excessive blunt force trauma, indicating that she had been extensively bludgeoned with an unknown instrument. Professors Glaser, Brash, and Smith further conducted the mutilation of 2 bodies would have taken approximately 8 hours to complete, and that 2 bodies had been drained of blood and viscera at the time of their dismemberment. So he drained them before, and it took 8 hours. Like, oh geez, like,
What is wrong with him?
What is wrong with you?
Literally.
You're messed up.
I know.
And to do this to your, well, I guess you can guess it was your wife. The person you're supposed to love.
Mm-hmm.
Hang in there. We're not halfway there.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. I always do long ones. I'm sorry. I can't help it. I find like ones that are like how the hell do you do this? Like, I don't understand. Several of the pages of the Sunday Graphic in which the remains have been wrapped in had a souvenir edition of the newspaper which had been printed and circulated solely in Morecambe and Lancaster area of England on September 15th, strongly suggesting that the 2 victims and their murderer lived in northwest England. As such, Inspector Jeremiah Lynch of Scotland Yard, who had been called in to assist the investigation, at the request of the chief constable, focused his efforts on recent missing persons reports filed within the section of England on or shortly after September 15th. In addition, several sections of the victims' remains had been discovered several hundred yards downstream of the banks of the Garden Home, Lynn, and Annan River, suggested a date on or prior to September 19th as to when the remains had been thrown into the stream. And that had been the final day of heavy rainfall in the area, which would make the flow of water have been much greater than the time of the victim's discovery. Sections of clothing in which the dismembered remains had been found were also distinctive, with unique factors such as repair patches beneath armpits upon a blouse and knots used to tie a pair of distinctive child's rompers, indicating that either both of the victims may have borne children. 5 days before the discovery of the human remains, Buck had visited Lancaster police, claiming his wife had once again deserted him. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. You made her desert you because you killed her. He had earlier visited the Morecambe household of parents of the family maid, Mary Jane Rogerson, claiming their daughter had recently engaged in an affair with a local youth, had become pregnant, and that his wife had agreed to discreetly take her away from their home to arrange an abortion. As abortions were, at that time, illegal in Britain, Buck had urged the Rogersons not to contact the police. That's the story you come up with?
Yeah, seriously.
The most, ludicrous of stories that you come up with. It gets worse. He's awful.
Yeah.
October 1st, the Rogersons visited Buck at his practice. On this day, he attempted to placate their fears for Mary Jane's safety by claiming she and his wife had broken into his safe, stolen 30 pounds before eloping from his household. What the heck?
Oh, okay.
Despite Buck's insistence on the occasion that his wife and Mary Jane would most certainly return once they spent the money, the fact that Buck now had given the Rogersons contrary explanation to why his wife and their daughter were missing, they filed a missing persons report with the police. Thank God.
Good.
Buck himself would not visit Lancaster police to formally report his wife and maid missing until October 4th. Could you be any more suspicious?
Seriously, don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
On October 9th, Scottish police visited the Rogerson household and asked Mary Jane's parents if they were able to identify any sections of clothing in which the bodies had been wrapped in. Mrs. Rogerson immediately recognized a blouse with distinct patchwork repair beneath the one armpit that had belonged to their daughter, which they last seen on September 14th. Mrs. Rogerson was unable to identify the pair of child's rompers shown to her and suggested the police should show the romper to a friend of hers named Edith Home, who lived in Grange over Sands with Isabella, who Isabella and Mary Jane and Buck's children had briefly lodged earlier the year on a brief vacation with. When Mrs. Home saw the rompers, she immediately recognized them as a pair she had bought for one of Buck's children the previous summer. Okay. A deep breath. This is a heavy one, I'm sorry.
Most of these are.
So, after talking with her, the chief constable discovered that Mary Jane's employer, Buck, had informally reported his wife missing the previous month, and that the final confirmed sightings of Isabella alive by anyone other than Buck himself had been on September 14th, when she had left her two sisters in Blackpool to return to her home, after travel to the seaside resort to view the Blackpool illuminations. The same day that police identified several items of clothing used to wrap the remains in, Buck again visited the Lancaster police station. On this occasion, he burst into tears, complaining that local rumors had begun to circulate regarding the discoveries of the human remains in Scotland as being those of his wife and maid, and that these rumors were proving to be detrimental to both his medical practice and his general reputation. I just want to He then requested they conduct discreet inquiries to locate his wife and maid before demanding police search his house to quash these rumors. Although Buck was placated by officers before being driven home, at this point he was considered the prime suspect in the murders by all law enforcement personnel by far in this investigation. Lancaster police had by this stage spoken to one of Buck's two chair ladies, Agnes Oxley, who confirmed the officers that on September 15th, Buck had arrived at her home and informed her that it was unnecessary for her to work at the house this day, and that when she arrived at the home the following day, the house had been in general state of shambles, with carpets removed, a pile of burnt fabric-like material in the garden, and the bathtub extensively stained with yellowish discoloration. Ew.
Ew.
Buck had specifically requested that she clean the bathtub that day, before explaining to her that the reason was his hand was bandaged that day. And then before explaining to her that the reason, he said that before he told her that the reason why his hand was all bandaged up was because he slammed it in a door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sure. A door attacked you.
Yeah.
Jumped out at you and hit you. Yep. Irritating. The police talked with Buck's neighbors and also discovered that Buck had asked Mrs. Hampshire and her husband to extensively clean the house in preparation for redecoration, and explained that he was unable to do so himself because he badly cut his hand opening a tin of fruit several days earlier. Mm-hmm. You can't be this clumsy.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm this clumsy, but like, you can't be. You're a surgeon. Like, you can't be like fumbling around, stuff like that.
Exactly.
He also given the Hampshires several stained carpets and a suit, saying they could keep them if they washed them. Why? On October 12th, Buck was arrested by Lancaster police and extensively questioned throughout the night. When asked for his accounts and whereabouts between September 14th and 29th, Ruxton proceeded a handwritten document entitled My Movements, which he then passed to the investigators before making a voluntary statement based on what he had written. He then... What is that word? I don't know what that word is. What did I write? He then was interviewed by investigators. In this interview, Buck denied that he'd ever been in Scotland after having established his Lancaster practice. However, he was unable to explain why his car registration number had been logged by a young cyclist that he knocked over in Cumbrian town of Kendal on September 17th, which he had led to his vehicle being intercepted in nearby Millenthorpe the same day as the cyclist had reported his registration number, which he had logged in his pocketbook. So he ran into somebody on while doing this, and then the cyclist kept the information. Good job.
Nice one.
No, I'm saying good job to the cyclist because they had the wherewithal to write down his registration information, which is just so funny. The police that he failed to stop at the scene of the accident. So he ran over this kid and then didn't stop. Police suggested to Buck that the incident was strongly circumstantial evidence, as the incident had occurred that he had been driving en route to Lancaster from Moffat, which he denied. He was further unable to explain why a police search of his home that day had revealed extensive traces of bloodstains on the stairs, railings, balustrade, and various carpets within the property, despite evidence of the house being extensively clean, and several walls around the staircase being recently redecorated. I am sorry, I'm a struggle bus all the time. I can't help it. He was unable to explain why human traces of fat and body tissue had been discovered within the drains of the property, with this much of material recovered within the section of the drains leading directly from the bathroom. Through several hours of questioning, Lancaster police repeatedly conversed with their Scottish counterparts who had previously visited Buck's household to remove objects such as sections of wallpaper, carpeting, skirting, boards, and silverware for more detailed forensic examination at Glasgow University. In the hours of October 13th, the finger and palm prints upon the second set of human hands discovered were found to be a match for Mary Jane Rogerson, and who had been at Dalton Square to be the child's caretaker. Upon hearing the forensic match, Buck was formally charged with the murder of Mary Jane Rogerson at 7:20 in the morning When Ruxton heard that the recitation of the charge, he stated, "Most empathetically, not, of course not. The farthest thing from my mind. What motive and why? What are you talking about?" That's what he said. He said, quote, "Most emphatically not, of course not. The farthest thing from my mind. What motive and why? What are you talking about?" So dramatic.
Literally.
Like, just deal with your consequences. You're a horrible person.
Seriously. Except that you're deranged.
Except that you're a psycho.
Yeah.
Except that you're disgusting. Except that what is wrong with you. Except that you're the terrible person. You're the most terrible person I've ever heard about in my whole life. Like, accept all that. Buck.
Yeah. Buck.
Following an appearance in custody of the Lancaster Police Court, situated on the ground floor of Lancaster Town Hall, Buck was remanded in custody. On November 5th, Buck was further charged with the murder of his wife, whose remains were positively identified using a technique of forensic anthropology, which an x-ray of a victim's skull was imposed on a photograph taken of Isabella Ruxton in life. So they compared an x-ray of her, like the skull that they found, to a picture of her head, like that she got before. So it was like medical records. Professor James Cooper Brash, who would later construct replica models of the two victims' left feet in flexible glycerin mixture and placed in the shoes that women had worn in life. The replica foot of the first victim recovered from the vicinity of the river precisely fit a shoe worn by Mary Jane. The replica foot of the second victim recovered precisely fit shoes worn by Isabella. So, we talked about all that. Now I get to go into the trial. I'm sorry, this is a long one. Hang in there, everybody. It's an interesting one, though.
It is.
On March 2nd, 1936, the trial of Buck Ruxton opened at Manchester. Oh my god, I cannot talk. Why is talking so hard for me right now? Am I dying? Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. My brain's just like, you're done. You're done. After the week you've had, you're done.
Yeah.
Okay, start that again. On March 2nd, 1936, the trial of Buck Ruxton opened at Manchester's High Court of Justice. He was tried before the Justice Singleton for the murder of Isabella Ruxton, and on this date chose to enter a formal plea of not guilty to the charge of murder. Following his plea, a jury was sworn to duty. So, of course, he pled not guilty.
Of course.
The prosecutors, I was going to say the prosecution. The prosecution at Ruxton's trial said that Ruxton, inflamed by jealousy and paranoia, had murdered Isabella Ruxton and Mary Jane Rogerson in the family household, and that he then discarded their bodies more than 100 miles from Lancaster in the Gardholm Lindstream and South Uplands of Scotland. In the opening speech to the jury, Joseph Cooksey Jackson stated to the jury, quote, "It does not need much imagination to suggest what probably happened in that house. It is very probable that Mary Jane Rogerson was a witness to the murder of Mrs. Ruxton, and that's why she met her death. You will hear that Mrs. Ruxton had received before her death violent blows in the face and that she was strangled. The suggestion of the prosecution is that her death and that the girl Mary took place outside these rooms on the landing at the top of the staircase outside the maid's bedroom. Because of the point down the staircase right into the bathroom, there are trails of enormous quantities of blood. I suggest that when she went up to bed, a violent quarrel took place, that he strangled his wife, and that Mary Jane Rogerson caught up with him in the act and had to die also. Mary's skull was fractured when she had some other blows on the top of her head, which would render her unconscious, and then probably was killed by some other means, probably a knife." End quote. However, the defense counsel based their defense upon the contention that the bodies had been misidentified and that the two bodies were not those of Isabella and Mary, but of two other unknown individuals, and that such the evidence presented to the jury was flawed. That was their case. Oh, it's just not them.
Yeah.
It's not them. What? They further said that the bloodstains found upon the suit and carpeting Ruxton had given to the Hampshires and located within his home following the arrest had been innocently accrued throughout the years Ruxton had operated his practice. Yeah, because you want to go to a doctor's office inside somebody's home where they don't clean things. That's so sanitary.
Yeah, totally.
What the heck? The prosecution called numerous witnesses to outline their case. Each witness testified, presenting their findings in the court with the same patience and diligence they had used to determine his conclusions. And that each of them examined by a combination of Jackson, Shawcross, and Fife, who were then tirelessly cross-examined by either Burkett or Kershaw, who frequently seized on the slightest discrepancy of the evidence given, and that frequently challenged assumptions made by medical and technical witnesses on each occasion on the opportunity. They also Burkett also frequently offered his own conjecture on how to some evidence presented could have innocently accrued. For example, on one occasion, Burkett contended that the blood found in the balustrade within Dalton Square may have been accidentally spilled there through either a birth, an abortion, or a woman's menstrual cycle occurring within the property. Oh yeah, it's just, a girl having her period, that's what that's from. What? I swear.
I can't.
Despite both defense counsel subjecting them to numerous eyewitnesses and the medical and forensic experts, the prosecution also introduced witnesses to attend cross-examination in an effort to challenge their findings, and vast majority of the prosecution witnesses, including all medical and forensic personnel to testify, remained steadfast to their conclusions regarding the identification of the victims and that their murders had been committed by Ruxton at Ruxton's house. Ruxton's defense counsel did occasionally succeed in getting a witness or expert to concede the possibility of an alternate explanation to their findings. However, I guess I also like to pick cases where the person who did it is just stupid.
Happens a lot of the time.
Because the sole witness to testify on behalf of the defense was Ruxton himself, who, upon the suggestion of his defense counsel, testified on the 9th day of the trial. He conducted himself poorly on the stand, being prone to bouts of hysterical sobbing as he clutched a silk handkerchief and hysterically claiming that he had last seen his wife when she'd taken Mary Jane Rogerson to Edinburgh for discreetly arranged abortion for her. He readily admitted that to having frequently argued with his wife over her alleged infidelity and justified the mental and physical hardships to which occasionally subjected his wife by simply saying, quote, "Who loves most chastises most." What the heck?
Huh?
It's a TikTok thing where it's just the cat going, huh? Huh? Over and over throughout this whole thing. Despite the admission, Buck was insistent that both women would be found alive and further say that if the actual identification of the bodies was correct, his happy home was now in tatters. He denied the early testimony of various prosecution witnesses who frequently accused of him of either lying or simply being mistaken. He frequently gave rambling, contradictory accounts of his own behavior and actions prior to his arrest when questioned by his own defense counsel and also when he was cross-examined by the prosecution. The trial of Buck Ruxton lasted 11 days, with the majority of the testimony delivered being from eyewitnesses and from medical and forensic experts, who testified on behalf of the prosecution. In his closing argument delivered on behalf of the prosecution, Joseph Cooksey Jackson summarized the testimony delivered by each of the medical and forensic experts regarding the painstaking identification of the victims and how items used to conceal their remains could be traced back to Buck's home. I was trying to mix his first name and last name together. Wow. Didn't you do that before?
Yeah.
Buxton. Which had been proven to match the sheeting from the bed of the master bedroom. Also outlining the inconsistencies in the account Buck had given numerous individuals as the whereabouts of his wife and his maid, reminded the jury of the eyewitnesses' testimony delivered by numerous individuals who had early testified. Before turning to Buck's exhaustive efforts to destroy evidence and pacify Mary Jane's parents to their daughter's whereabouts in weeks between the murder and his arrest. In reference to the actual motive for the murders, Jackson suggested the jury took no further than Buck's obsessive jealousy and violent temper. In accordance to the legal tradition, Burkett, who was on the defense, having called his client to the stand, had entitled himself to make his closing argument on behalf of the defense after the prosecution address. Unopposed before the prosecution, his closing argument reiterated that the defense's case that although the victims were indeed 2 women who had been murdered, the remains were not those of Isabella and Mary Jane. Yeah, okay, we'll go with that. Sure.
Yeah.
That the idea of the motive for Isabella's death had been Ruxton's suspicions of his wife's infidelity was merely conjecture. Burkett further emphasized that although the testimony delivered had allowed the possibility that the bodies may have been of those of Buxton.
Oh, not again.
Buck's wife and family maid. The conclusion had been drawn part from circumstantial evidence, and that this evidence still did not prove Buck had been their actual murderer. Burkett then emphasized that in any British murder trial, the burden is not upon the defense to prove innocence, but rather on the Crown to prove guilt. Upon completion of both counsel's closing arguments, the judge delivered his final instructions to the jury. This address lasted for several hours, and in reference to all evidence and testimony which had been presented at the trial, Judge Singleton instructed the jury that Buck must have been given a benefit of reasonable doubt that they may exist in their minds, adding, quote, "If there is any avenue, let him walk down to freedom, but if there is not, he cannot," end quote. Following the final instruction from the Justice Singleton, the jury retired to consider their verdict. They would deliberate. That's not even a word. Deliberate for just over 1 hour before returning a verdict of guilty against Buck. Consequently, Judge Singleton sentenced Buck to death. When asked by Judge Singleton if he had anything to say in response to the verdict and sentence, Buck responded by stating, "I am very sorry," before politely thanking the court for its patience and fairness of his trial. Yeah. You're sorry, all right. You're just sorry because you actually got prosecuted.
Exactly.
Buck then informed the judge of his intentions to appeal the verdict. I hate him.
Same.
He did file an appeal against his conviction. In this appeal, Buck contended that in the judge's final instructions delivered to the jury, that the jury had been urged to consider prosecution testimony pertaining to the bloodstains found on Buck's suit that he had given the hamsters, which had introduced as evidence, but that had not instructed the jury to also consider the testimony as delivered by prosecution witnesses who had conceded the bloodstains upon that suit may have originated from completely innocent sources. Yeah, sure it did.
Mm-hmm.
The appeal stated that the forensic examination of his vehicle by the prosecution to have vehicle transport to use the bodies had revealed no traces of either mud or blood. Buck contended that the cumulative effect on all matters raised were tantamount to substantial misdirection. Buck then said the verdict should not be allowed to stand. Sure. The appeal was heard at the Court of Criminal Appeal by Lord Chief Justice on April 27th of 1936. The appeal was dismissed the same day, being insufficient as to even remotely suggesting any form of misdirection on the part of the judge at Buck's trial. So that's funny. They were like, nope, it's not getting appealed because you suck. In the hours immediately prior to his execution, Buck Ruxton wrote a letter to his chief defense counsel, Norman Burkett. In this letter, Ruxton thanked Burkett for his skill in which he had conducted his defense before stating, quote, "I know that in a few hours I shall be going to meet my maker, but I say to you, sir, I am entirely innocent of this crime." Uh-huh.
Oh, please.
Sure.
Get out of here.
Go to the execution chair. Just go. But I'm still like in the gray area on executions, but I think he deserves to be put to death.
Yeah. That was...
This part is even crazier. There was a petition from Lancaster residents urging clemency for Ruxton, having collected over 10,000 signatures.
What?
Yeah. But Buck was hanged at HM Prison, Manchester, on the morning of May 12th, 1936. Yay!
Bye, Buck.
Bye. Sound like you said something else right
I
there?
did.
Oh.
No, it did sound like I said
I thought you did.
No. Hi, Buck.
The day after Buck's execution, a Sunday newspaper published a brief handwritten confession written by Buck himself that he wrote the day after his arrest, which he had instructed to be open only in the event of his execution, or returned to him or it would be returned to him if he was acquitted. In this confession, he admitted to killing his wife while in a state of jealous fury, only to be interrupted in the act by Mary Jane, as a result of which he also had to kill her.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Quote, I killed Mrs. Ruxton in a fit of temper because I thought she had been with a man. I was mad at the time. Mary Jane Rogerson was present at the time. I had to kill her. That was his confession.
Oh my god. Of course.
We're almost there. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Just a little bit more. Despite intense police searches, the torso of Mary Jane was never found, having likely flowed into the Solway Firth. The remains of her body actually recovered were buried in a churchyard of the village of Overton. The area in and around Garden Home Lynn were where Buck had disposed of the dismembered body parts of his wife and Mary Jane, of his wife Isabella and Mary Jane, who was the maid, would also become colloquially known as around Moffat as Ruxton's Dump. So they named the river that, which is awful. The house on Dalton Square where the murders were committed would remain vacant for decades. In the 1980s, the building underwent substantial internal renovation, particularly the bathroom, which would become architects' offices. The building itself remains non-residential. The bath in which Buck Ruxton dismembered his two victims was removed from the property to be used as evidence during the trial. The bathtub was later used as a horse trough by the Mounted Police Division at Lancashire County Police Headquarters in the civil parish of Hutton, Lancashire, and is currently on display at the Lancashire Police Museum at Lancaster Castle. That's really hard to say. Lancaster Castle. That's an alliteration. Their children, Elizabeth, Diane, and William Ruxton, are believed to have been raised in an orphanage, which is so sad.
Yeah.
And then a couple of pop culture things. The case of the bodies under the bridge has been dramatized by British radio scriptwriter and screenwriter Harry Alan Towers as part of the radio crime drama series Secrets of Scotland Yard. This episode, entitled Dr. Ruxton Axe Killer, was first broadcasted approximately in 1950. The American criminal justice television series American Justice had also broadcast the episode focusing on the murders committed by Buck Ruxton. Commissioned by the A&E network, the episode focusing upon Ruxton's murders was first broadcast in December of 2000. Catching History's Criminals, a BBC 4 forensic series, he also broadcast an episode focusing on the case of Buck Ruxton. The episode, entitled A Question of Identity, was first broadcasted in June of 2015. The first book exclusively devoted on the murders committed by Buck Ruxton, medical legal aspects of Ruxton case, was co-authorized by John Glasser Jr. and James Cooper Brash. The book was released in 1937 and focused primarily on the innovative forensic techniques used to both identify the victims and identify the locations of their murder and dismemberment, then ensuring the conviction of the murderer. Some notes. Okay, so I was right. They actually were not married. I found this after.
Yeah.
They were never married. She just adopted his surname and both presented themselves as a married couple.
Yeah.
When asked about his relationship with Isabella at his subsequent trial, Ruxton exclaimed, quote, "We were the sort of people who could not live with each other or without each other." What? Although Isabella was an outgoing woman who enjoyed socializing with leading Lancaster residents and was a popular guest at local functions, no solid proof was ever provided to support Ruxton's claim that she had ever been unfaithful to him. And one Lancaster resident would later state that Isabella Ruxton had indeed kept regular company with Robert Edmondson, but that does not even mean anything. When Ruxton left his children in the care of the dentist and his wife, the couple noted that Ruxton's hands was heavily bandaged. When the couple questioned him to how he acquired the wound, Ruxton claimed to cut his hand while opening a tin of fruit, which I said earlier. The Hampshires cut the name tag off of his suit too. Forgot about that. But yeah, so that was the case of the Jigsaw Murders.
I hate him.
I hate him too.
Awful.
He is awful. So yeah, we hate him. He's awful.
Yes, we do.
He should not be named the Jigsaw Murders or murder or whatever. I don't know how to end this. That one was heavy.
Yeah, it was.
I'm sorry.
I never know how to end them because it's like we just dropped a whole weight.
Well, if you want to see beautiful Elizabella.
That's a new one.
If you want to see the beautiful Isabella and Mary Jane, you can go to our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Dreadfully Twisted Podcast. If you would like to send us cases that you want us to cover or your stories, paranormal or true crime, anything like that, you can email us at dreadfullytwistedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can comment on our Reddit page or /dreadfullytwistedpod. Please share us to your friends and family. We really appreciate you sharing the podcast. Share our social medias. Go on our social media. You know what? Go on our social medias and, comment, blow it up. Just blow it up, please. Blow up the podcast because, we really need your help here to help the podcast stay relevant and get out there on the charts and everything. And another thing you could do is you could rate us on wherever you listen to your podcast, our podcast at. If you do rate us, give us 5 stars, please. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. And yeah, we really appreciate it. Yes. It really does help us. And yeah. So
send us to your friends and family.
Yeah. And share us. Yeah.
We love you.
And please keep listening.
Yes.
Please keep listening. I know I'm struggle bus sometimes, but please keep listening. Talking is hard.
It is.
But if you've listened this far, you understand.
Exactly.
You get us. And we love you guys. And don't be like Buck.
Yeah. Or any of these horrible
people. There's a kitty on the TV.
He's sad.
What's going on?
In the rain.
Oh, wait, that's a hurricane? What are you doing? Save the cat. What are you doing just standing there videoing him?
Yeah, it's making me mad. Okay.
Okay. We're going to end on that note. Yeah. Save the cat.
Save the cat.
We love you guys. We will see you guys next week.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, we got off there for an end.